Welcome back to the third and final section of the Wednesday, March 8th, 2023 edition of the DMZ America podcast. I'm Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
Scott Status, coming to you from the right.
Okay,
I'm going to start talking like Walter Cronkite for some reason, because that's the way it is.
If you are not familiar with this podcast, Scott is a master of mimicry. So I'm never going to ask you to copy my voice because I would be so sad to hear how I sound.
You would.
I know. I had one when I had my old radio show in LA. One time, I was dying to go out to a concert. Actually, it was a drag concert, and which would be banned now in Florida. The entire crew, we all took off, the board op, everyone. And so we recorded the 3-hour show before we left. So I had the weird experience of listening to myself, quote unquote, live on the radio as I was driving through LA. And actually I was like, okay, so I don't have the best voice on radio, but I was like, it's not as shitty as I thought. I don't know.
No, it never is. No, we all hear our voices inside our head and it sounds awful. And people hate hearing their own voices. I don't know where that comes from, what kind of human psychology that comes from. Because I don't know, I mean, other than trained professionals who love their voice, you know?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Inside your own head, it just sounds, my voice sounds tinny and squeaky and horrible.
Yeah.
And then I hear on the radio, I go, no, that's not what it sounds like. But anyway.
That's why I'm going to try to listen with my own ass from now on. All right. So, so anyway, if I as a longtime Ted Rall people know, defamation law is of great interest to me for
yes, it is.
And anyway, so Fox News Channel has been sued by a company called Dominion Voting Systems for $1.6 billion. And basically what it boils down to is that during the controversy raised by Donald Trump and his supporters after the 2020 election, in which he claimed falsely that the election had been stolen by Joe Biden, among the various falsehoods that were propagated by Trump and his supporters was the idea that Dominion Voting Systems voting machines had been intentionally breached and corrupted in order to give Biden votes that he didn't really get. This didn't happen. Okay, just be really clear. Dominion, don't sue us. We know that Biden won the election, and we know that your voting machines are awesome and delicious.
I have one in my house right now.
I've got 2 on order from Amazon. So, but the point is that there's been quite a series of emails that have come out through discovery that show that people like Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity kind of knew that they were lying about Dominion.
I don't think there was a kind of, is there?
Yeah, they knew. And they also, interestingly, especially Tucker said that he hates Donald Trump. He said, I hate him passionately, he said in one text to someone else at Fox. So
well, he sure was having
so there's been some
intimate relations with him for someone he hated.
So there's been some dish here about the main story has been about like, wow, Fox lies and they know they lie. And so that's been what most people have focused on. However, legal scholars are kind of concerned that this will make it easier to sue media corporations. And I guess I kind of don't really see why that's a problem. But
no.
Let me quote something. So there's a professor named Jane Kirtley. She's at the University of Minnesota. She specializes in media law. She's a law professor. And so she says she thinks this will be a slippery slope. If Fox loses, she says, quote, there would be a scramble by other news organizations to distance themselves from Fox's techniques and Fox's editorial decisions. I'm like, so?
Okay.
But the problem
is, so far,
so good. But the problem is that by lifting the veil on the editorial decision-making process, we're now going to see all news organizations called into question going forward. Again, I'm like, so? And so, Yeah. And so, I mean, that's the interesting thing, is that basically it would force media defendants or media companies to be more careful, to check things out, to be less reckless, to be, I mean, I guess,
Well, to do what they used to do, you mean, before it got eviscerated, the
they
news
call
business?
they call this a quote unquote chilling effect. I mean, it is virtually impossible to sue a media corporation in the United States for defamation. There's a Supreme Court case from 1964 named New York Times versus Sullivan that basically gave the media basically a license to libel. But I guess I would love to see Dominion win. I mean, under the standard, right? They have to basically know that that specific people involved in the decision making at Fox knew that what they were saying was false and potentially damaging, and then of course the jury would then decide to what extent that was true.
Right.
I mean, I think most experts say that it's still going to be a tough climb, but Dominion has gotten further because they're a huge corporation than like I was able to get against the LA Times, in that they were able to get to trial and discovery. So the thing is, I mean, you just know, like in my case, if I had gotten discovery, there would have been devastating communications from within the LA Times structure between people talking about like, oh, what do we do about Ted Rall? And that would have changed things. I'm sure. And these emails, internal communications at Fox, I think it's brutal. And I think there is real cause to think that Dominion could prevail here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Dominion has every right to. I have to believe what Fox and its minions reporting and promulgating these false stories that they knew were false, apparently, going forward. And it has the damage to Dominion had to have been devastating. Is it chilling? No, because here's the thing. I came up in a news world where you had 2, 3, 4 layers of vetting for every story. And so you couldn't have this happen there because it wouldn't be allowed, because the systems in place, which have since, as I alluded to it a moment ago, are eviscerated. There's no one. They literally have reporters sending in stuff from their phones and posting it to the website without going through an editor or a copy editor or anyone to vet the information that they have in the story. And now this is the real danger we're facing. Will this have a chilling effect? I hope so.
Yeah, no, I sense this. I mean, Scott, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it really feels like the arrogance of corporate media in this situation is unbelievable. Like, here's a quote from NPR. James Goodale, who was general counsel for the New York Times back in the day when they decided to publish the Pentagon Papers, he said, "It's not a good idea to permit a wholesale inquiry into newsroom decisions as a whole. And also I include ownership as part of that inquiry." I'm like, newsroom decisions, including ownership decisions as to news judgment, should be protected by the First Amendment. Why? Like, what?
Yeah, that's not.
And it's also, doesn't it seem incredibly hypocritical? I mean, news organizations are constantly filing FOIA requests in order to demand that government be transparent. They're constantly investigating private corporations to find out about their internal workings and decision making. They go after, think about like Elon Musk, for example, at Twitter. I mean, how his every move has been carefully scrutinized, and rightly so. Why should they be above the same level of scrutiny? I mean, news organizations should be setting the standard for transparency.
Exactly. Well, I've always felt that. I mean, I can tell you stories, Ted, things that happened with me, and I wanted to say something, and the editor of the paper said, "No, we're letting our spokesperson do it." And the one thing the spokesperson had said to every inquiry was, "No comment."
It's ridiculous.
It's hypocritical.
It's like when I sued the LA Times and other news organizations, major news organizations from around the world called the LA Times for comment. They wouldn't even say no comment. They wouldn't even take their calls. I mean, they basically acted like they were the CIA. Well, actually, that's not true. The CIA would make a comment.
It is the arrogance, and that's been the mandate for, or the mantra of big media for decades, which is we're beyond reproach. You can't question us. And it's like, horse shit. Of course we can. That's exactly what you do in this in a democracy with things that are big. Is you question them and you kick them and you see how they work. To say that you don't have any right to know how the newsroom works. I mean,
Yeah,
think of the
or
arrogance
the
of that.
owners. I mean, I guess the LA Times would love that since they were owned by the LAPD. So the LAPD would be protected by this standard. Well, they are.
Think of the arrogance of that statement. It's mind-boggling, and it's always been that way, Ted. I mean, Ted never believed me when I described editors and how they are.
Well,
You
that's
just
because
never.
you worked inside the building. I was always on the
Yeah,
outside. I didn't
I
know.
know, but you never believed me what self-anointed righteous dipshits they were and continue to be. How do you take a multi-billion-dollar business and run it into the ground? That's a certain level of incompetence and dumb shittery that is, beyond my imaginings. So yeah, so should Fox News, now Fox News, the other part of the story though that I find galling is Fox News people saying if they win, this will be the end of Fox News. It'll be very hard to recover from an award that big. I'm saying, how many hundreds of millions of dollars have they shelled out in sexual harassment settlements
Fair
for
point.
their talent? And it's a lot. And so $1 billion to them is really not, I mean, it'll hurt, it'll sting, no
Mhm.
question, but will it kill them? Will it knock Fox News off the air? It will not.
Well, if it were going to knock Fox News off the air, there is a possibility, obviously, when after there's a judgment, assuming that they got the full 1.6 billion, which may or may not happen, they can negotiate, right? I mean, like you can always, Fox could theoretically go to, I mean, that's what happened in the case of Gawker, right? Remember Hulk Hogan was sued successfully in the state of Florida because Gawker, in its infinite arrogance, believed that it was newsworthy to post a picture of Hulk Hogan fucking a woman who was not his wife. So they posted the video. I don't know why this was news that people have sex, but Hogan sued, and
Shocking.
in my opinion, won correctly. Gawker did go under, but they negotiated. I mean, at that point, it's like they say, look, we don't have the $120 million that you have won. So we have 40. Take it or leave it, or you'll get nothing at all. And then they took it. So that's what would happen. And by the way, what would really happen? Let's just say Fox News were to go off the air. I'm pretty sure some other media company would see the opportunity in,
Yeah.
in a very entertaining, conservative oriented cable news channel.
Yes. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. So, I think Fox is going to lose this big. I mean, when you get to Discovery, the emails are damning as hell. I mean, you can't. They just, yeah. How if you're Fox News, they've got to be behind the scenes saying, "Can we settle this?" Because clearly we're going to get screwed.
Yeah, but it looks like it's really, I mean, if they're smart, that's what they're doing. But these media companies have been so like out of control for so long. They probably really think, their lawyers probably really think, look, we've got New York Times versus Sullivan, we've got anti-slap. We used anti-slap to fuck over what's her name? Sarah Palin, even though the New
Yeah.
York Times clearly should have lost that case. Sarah Palin was no doubt defamed by the New York Times. But they got, they told her to fuck off and they won. Rolling Stone magazine, they remember the whole University of Virginia, the campus rape case story that
Oh
they
yeah.
published,
Yeah.
totally false, made up completely. They were probably, they did settle the case, but it's like it not, they might have prevailed if they just kept appealing. I mean, defamation law is radically skewed in favor
Well, of
of
course it is.
media defendants.
Of course it is. It's skewed in favor of the wealthy, because the
Yes.
wealthy can get, and this is where our politics get screwed up, because now the wealthy have the ability to buy lobbyists.
That's
And
why it was such big news when Carol Burnett successfully sued the National Enquirer for they had falsely alleged that she was an alcoholic, a crazy drunk. And anyway, she was rich, and she had the lawyers, and she was able to hold them accountable, but that's almost never the case. Anyway, Scott, I know you have a pressing matter to get to, so I'm
Yeah.
going to let you go. So where can everybody find your work?
Well, I mentioned Center Clip earlier, the short podcasts. It's a free app you should download. But if you want to see my printed work, you can go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis. That's one word. gocomics.com/Scott Stantis. Or you can go to gocomics.com/Prickly City and see my political comic strip. You can also go to the Chicago Tribune opinion section and see a gallery of the work I do for them. Or you can go to Dallas Morning News. It's actually dallasnews.com, and see a gallery of work I do for them. Ted, where can we see your stuff?
You can find my editorial cartoons at rawl.com. You can go to gocomics.com/Ted Rall. You can find my column at creatorssyndicate.com or creators.com. You can also go to whowhatwhy.org on Saturdays when they run my cartoon that's exclusive to them. And you can also go to sputniknews.com Tuesdays and Thursdays for other cartoons that I do just for them. So Scott, as always, a pleasure. Thank you very much for.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, this is fun.
Okay,
this will be interesting to see how the YouTubers look at our lovely countenances.
They're just going to make fun of our looks. That's what they.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I do. You do.
I do.
Come on.
True. I make fun of my own looks. There's nothing they can say that I don't think 5 times worse. All right. So see you next week, unless news breaks. And thanks everybody for listening. Bye, Scott.
Ciao, man.